It came out in February of 2018. The Canon 4000D has been branded the ultimate beginner's DSLR camera, but costing just £250 with an 18 to 55mm lens and a 64GB SD card. Is it any good? We've come to MCM Comic Con, the largest modern pop culture event in the UK, to test it out and find out.
On my own, but I don't know why. You hit the road, but you don't realize I won't look back when you're around.
Well, welcome to the channel and welcome to another review video. My name is Kai Song, and as a videographer who is mainly used to using Canon full-frame cameras such as the 6D, the 5D Mark III and 4, I've taken a step back today and I'm specifically looking at Canon's cheapest DSLR, the 4000D, coming in at £250, about $300 with the kit lens. But is it worth it? So first up, let's talk about sensor size, and the 4000D has an 18 megapixel crop frame sensor, which is equivalent to the old Canon 550D, which was my first DSLR and a pretty decent camera at the time. So we're gonna take some shots inside, we're gonna get some shots outside with the kit lens. I feel like I need to change this to something a bit more professional in the meantime, so that people don't look down on me because the body is so small and it's so light. You know, you're not gonna break a sweat carrying this. One of the things that struck me in particular about this camera was the weight. It's extremely light. Coming in at 436 grams, it's nearly half the weight of the 860 gram 5D Mark III. Now looking at the rest of the body, you have a single SD card slot, which you insert in the same place as the battery, and you have HDMI and USB connections. There is no headphone input or mic input, but remember that this is a bare bones DSLR. You do, however, get a flip out flash and a standard hot shoe connector. The body is all plastic on the 4000D, including the mount, although the button placement is very familiar if you're a Canon user. I feel like Canon is creating DSLRs like this to train the next generation to use DSLRs and cameras like these to get people ready for the Canon system. You get a tiny 2.7-inch 4:3 aspect ratio TFT LCD screen, which is 320 by 240 pixels. It's very reminiscent of the old Nokia mobile phones, if you can remember them. Everything is controlled by the mode dial switch at the top of the camera, from turning it on, to using your manual picture settings, to changing it to video mode. The ISO values range from 100 to 6400 and are expandable up to 12,800. But since it's a crop frame camera, I'd be wary about pushing it past 800 or 1600 ISO, especially for video, as things start to get quite grainy. For picture styles, you have your standard customizable Canon picture settings, which are always nice, your 9 auto focus points with 1 cross type right in the center, and you've got a continuous shooting rate of 3 FPS, which is extremely noisy. I mean, you can hear that, right? You don't want to take this to a wedding, because like you would just disrupt the whole service, wouldn't you? Like the whole ceremony, they wouldn't be able to hear the valves, just hear this clicking, this terrible clicking sound in the background. But never mind all the specs. What are the quality of the photos and videos like in the real world? So as you know, I'm a videographer, filmmaker. I am not a pro photographer, but my man Eugene here is a pro photographer. So we're going to hand this piece of equipment over to him.
I humbly accept your offer.
And we want to see what you turn around. So we started off using the standard kit lens, and Eugene turned around some pretty decent photos. But then again, he is a pro photographer.
Okay, now we got a big L-series glass 1635 f2.8 Mark II lens, which was £1,600 when it came out, which is boasting.
I won't look back.
I also tried my hand at a few sneaky shots using the legendary 70-200mm f-stop 2.8 version 2 Canon L lens. Now, I'm far from a professional photographer, but if we zoom in here, we actually do have quite a fair amount of sharpness around the eyes, and a nice bokeh too. But then again, we are using a $1,500 2.8 Canon L lens, and I doubt many people are going to pair a cheap DSLR with this type of glass. But then again, you never know. The video capabilities of the Canon 4000D include 1080p at 25 FPS, and you also have 24 FPS for that cinematic film look. You can film in 50 FPS but only at 720p, and there's a 640 by 480 option for some reason. And I literally can't think of anyone who would use that option, or any scenario where anyone would use that option. And that's all you get. But how does it look? We gave filmmaker and videographer Sharky Cole the job of creating a small video with the Canon 4000D on the Ronin S at London Super Comic Con, and here's what he turned around. Something that we were quite surprised at was the face detection focusing. It was something that we simply didn't think was going to be included on the 4000D, and it was nice to have. It was great when it actually worked, which was about 50% of the time. Just be careful not to move the camera too quickly, or for your subject of interest to move their head too quickly. When it worked, it was brilliant. The Canon 4000D does have some extras for your money. For example, the Wi-Fi option, something that the 5D Mark III doesn't have. Getting pics out on your phone via the Canon app and then on social media super quickly, as well as being able to control your camera from the app, can be quite useful. Now, we didn't have any expectations going in using this camera at all, but we were actually quite impressed at some of the photos that we walked away with, and even with the kit lens, and not just cheating by putting L glass in front of it. It's extremely lightweight, and actually can be quite fun to use. So who would look at getting one of these cameras? Of course, it's called a beginner's DSLR for a reason, to introduce you to the world of DSLR photography. Now, if you're on a budget, I'd also recommend purchasing a Canon 50mm f-stop 1.8 or f-stop 1.4 lens with this camera, which can take some pretty decent photos. There are also basic video functions, as we've spoken about, but I can't really think of any instance where I would use the video on this camera, especially not for any professional work. To some, it might be seen as Canon's last-ditch attempt to get as many people onto the DSLR bandwagon as possible before the mirrorless system starts to take over. But does that make these kind of cameras redundant? Well, not necessarily. Having something as simple as the 4000D without any bells or whistles can really help newbies learn the basics of photography. It might be just what you need to focus on the photography parts and less on the technology side of things. And of course, all of this is transferable knowledge that you can then take with you to better cameras and onto future mirrorless systems. So, those are my thoughts on the Canon 4000D. If you've got one already, let me know your experiences down in the comment section below. Again, a massive thank you to Sharky Cole, Eugene's Art and Alps Lifey for helping make this video. I'll also put links down to their social media stuff down in the description. And if you haven't done so already, do consider subscribing to the Kaicreative YouTube channel. So that's it for me now, guys. Thank you for watching. Stay creative, imagine, implement and inspire. And I will catch you next time on Kaicreative.